The secret power of moving in silence. Absolutely. Here's a richly detailed and dramatic rewrite of Part 1. The ghost returns, deepening character, setting, and emotional undercurrents while maintaining full cohesion with the rest of the story. The world had moved on. Or so it thought. 3 years had passed since Adrian Blackwell, once the most feared and admired strategist in the tech world, vanished without explanation. No scandals. No farewell. No digital footprints. It was as if the earth had swallowed him whole. Rumors had turned to myths. Some said he'd fled the country after sabotaging a global surveillance deal. Others claimed he had died in isolation, driven mad by the secrets he once hoarded. Then came the summit. It was the annual Orion Conference, an exclusive gathering of the world's most powerful CEOs, political kingmakers, and tech prophets. Security was airtight. Access was invite-only. No one unaccounted for ever slipped through the cracks. Until that day. As the keynote speaker took the stage, murmurs rippled through the crowd. A tall figure in a charcoal coat, hands in pockets, face half shrouded in the glow of LED lights, casually walked into the grand hall. He didn't check in. He didn't even blink as security flinched. He moved with the same cold precision that once dismantled entire corporate regimes. It was Adrian. Gasps filled the air like gunshots. He didn't speak. He didn't smile. He simply made eye contact with the CEO of Zenith Corp, a smug empire that had grown fat off the vacuum his absence had left. That gaze lasted 3 seconds. And then everything changed. Within hours, headlines screamed of a hostile takeover. By morning, Zenith's board of directors had resigned en masse, their secrets exposed in a perfectly timed leak. Their stocks collapsed. Their influence burned to ash. And yet, no one could trace it back to Adrian. There were no emails, no calls, no evidence. Just a man who had returned, not with noise, but with consequence. The elite whispered his name like a curse. Allies didn't know whether to reach out or run. Enemies began fortifying walls. The ghost had returned, not for revenge, but for something bigger. Something no one could see yet. But behind those unreadable eyes, one thing was clear. Adrian wasn't just back. He was beginning something. Absolutely. Here is the explosive, emotionally charged finale, Part 6. Silence breaks, where everything unravels. The truth is finally spoken, and the cost of silence is revealed in full. All right, now the walls start to crumble. Here's a deeper, tension-fueled rewrite of Part 4. The collapse begins, where the storm Adrian has summoned finally breaks loose, and the true weight of his silence begins to show. The world didn't notice at first. One tech firm's stock tanking? Market volatility. A senator stepping down amid scandal? Politics as usual. A whistleblower going missing? Coincidence? Maybe. But in the span of 6 days, the headlines began to blur into panic. Virion Industries files for bankruptcy. Zenith's remaining assets freeze under federal review. A covert data cluster linked to psychological warfare leaks onto the dark web. It was no longer a question of if Adrian Blackwell was behind it. It was how much more he was holding back. Inside his quiet London loft, walls lined with analog tech and outdated hardware, Adrian worked in near-complete darkness. His only companion was silence and the dull hum of encrypted servers. He monitored the chaos like a conductor watching a symphony of collapse unfold exactly as composed. Every move was intentional. Every consequence calculated. But not everyone was paralyzed by fear. Celine Ward was done waiting in the wings. She'd spent years building contingency plans, diversifying assets, inserting sleeper code into her own systems. But Adrian was operating on a level she hadn't seen before. He wasn't targeting power. He was targeting pressure points. Celine initiated a counter-strategy. She reached out to federal cyber units under an alias. She deployed AI mimics of Adrian's old digital footprint to create confusion. And most boldly, she reached out to him directly again. This time, she offered a deal. They met in an abandoned metro station sealed off since the late 90s, chosen for its lack of surveillance. Crumbling tiles. Rusted steel. No echoes. Just two people surrounded by ghosts of the past. "You're running out of time," Celine said without pleasantries. "The program is waking up. You think you're controlling it, but we both know that's not how it works." Adrian, leaning against an old support pillar, looked hollowed out. Not weak, just burdened, like a man standing between a fuse and a bomb. "This isn't about control anymore," he said softly. "It's about containment. And we both know you didn't come here to help me do that." Celine didn't flinch. "Then speak. Say the truth. Expose the program before it spreads. Shut it down." But Adrian shook his head slowly. "You think the world will believe it came from us? That we were trying to stop it, not design it? The second I speak, they'll weaponize the silence." And that's when she saw it, real fear in his eyes. For the first time, Celine understood. This wasn't about ego or legacy. Adrian wasn't playing a game. He was holding back a flood. One word too many, one truth exposed too early, and the psychological program they buried, a neural manipulation system hidden in social media code, would no longer need secrecy to thrive. It would feed on reaction, on panic, on attention. "Then what's your plan?" she demanded. Adrian's reply was barely a whisper. "Let them break themselves first. And then, maybe I speak." But time was running out. The world wasn't just unraveling. It was evolving into something else. And in the shadows, a third player, unseen and unnamed, watched Adrian and Celine from afar, waiting for the right moment to strike. Ready for part 5? The betrayal? It's the twist that flips everything. Now we get to the heart-shattering betrayal. Here's the expanded, intense rewrite of part 5. The betrayal. Adrian Blackwell had always been a solitary figure. His trust was a currency as rare as the secrets he kept, and he'd never once let anyone close enough to see the cracks in his armor. The only person he ever allowed to get near was Carter Hale, his closest confidant, and the one person who understood the why behind every move. Carter had been there in the beginning, when Adrian constructed the algorithms that powered the program buried deep within the digital framework of social media. He was Adrian's right hand, his partner in the shadows. For years, Carter had been a shadow of Adrian, working quietly under his guidance, pulling the strings from behind the scenes, but always in Adrian's orbit. But trust, Adrian had learned, was a fragile thing. And in the world he had created, nothing was certain. On the surface, Carter seemed loyal. But as the weeks went on, the silence Adrian had woven around himself began to unravel. Whispers reached him, small, subtle hints that something wasn't right, not with the system, but with the people around him. Adrian's suspicion grew like a gnawing ache. And then came the crack. Late one evening, in the dim glow of his private office, Adrian received a message, encrypted but unmistakable in its sender. Carter Hale. The message was simple. "I did what had to be done. I've secured our future. Don't make me regret this." Adrian's pulse didn't race. It didn't have to. He had been betrayed before. But this time, it felt different. He watched the digital signature as it pinged from an unknown server, then a second ping from a third-party service. His mind raced as the pieces came together. Carter had been playing both sides. All this time, he had been feeding information to an unknown party. A rival group, or worse, someone who wanted the program Adrian created for themselves. Adrian didn't waste time. He immediately traced the source back, too quickly. The moment the trail led to a shadowy address in the dead center of a data fortress in Zurich, Adrian knew Carter had betrayed him to Celine. Celine Ward, the CEO of Neurovox, had played her hand. She'd been feeding Carter intel for months, manipulating him into helping her retrieve Adrian's hidden files. It wasn't about the tech or the money. It was about breaking the silence Adrian had kept so fiercely. With the truth now in Carter's hands, Celine had one goal: force Adrian to speak and expose the weaponized psychological program before it could infect the world further. And Carter, desperate for power and validation, had fallen for it. The betrayal was as sharp as a knife through Adrian's gut. His mind spun as he took in the cruel irony of it all. The very men who had helped him build the program now stood with Celine, about to unleash the chaos they had both tried to contain. But Adrian was never one to be caught unprepared. He moved quickly. His fingers flew across his desk, commanding the security systems to lock down, tracing the exposed data to a dead server in the Swiss Alps. And then, with a cold, chilling calm, Adrian did what he always did. He controlled the narrative. Before Carter could get too far, Adrian activated his backup protocol, the Black Void algorithm, a fail-safe so powerful it could erase data permanently from any device. He executed it with ruthless efficiency. As the servers went dark, Carter's messages stopped pinging. The screen went silent. But the damage had already been done. The files, the codes, and the hidden revelations that had once been Adrian's only currency were now in enemy hands. Adrian didn't feel satisfaction. He felt the weight of an irreversible decision. Celine had her leverage now. Carter had played his part, and now the war for control over the world-changing program was no longer about tech. It was about the truth and who could manipulate it first. The question now was, could Adrian control the storm he had unleashed, or was it too late to stop what was coming? Let me know when you're ready for Part 6, Silence Breaks. The ultimate showdown awaits. 6. Silence Breaks expanded. The world was no longer whispering. It was screaming. Markets were in freefall. Trust in digital networks had collapsed. Unrest spread like wildfire, fueled by algorithms no one understood anymore. The line between manipulated and manipulator blurred into static. And through it all, Adrian Blackwell had said nothing. Until now. The leak of Adrian's hidden files in the previous week had turned theory into proof. The world now knew the very platforms people used to express themselves had been infected by a behavioral prediction engine, a secret psychological program built to nudge, polarize, and ultimately control. And Adrian had helped design it. But what the leak didn't reveal was why. With panic mounting and media frothing at the mouth, the global public demanded a scapegoat. Governments branded Adrian a terrorist. Tech leaders labeled him a rogue operator. Everyone wanted a soundbite, a confession, a villain. And finally, they got one. In a globally hijacked broadcast, untraceable, uninterruptible, Adrian appeared. Alone. No security. No filter. Just a man calm and pale under a single hanging light. You want to know why I disappeared? Why I moved in silence? Why I never spoke? He paused, looked directly into the camera. Because the truth was never something I could explain. It was something I had to survive. Adrian then did what he had avoided for years. He told the entire story. How the program began as a joint research project between 3 major corporations. How it evolved from predicting consumer behavior to engineering collective emotion. How he and Celine realized too late that the code could replicate itself, subtly altering what people saw, what they believed, and eventually, what they were. He showed them proof. Live algorithmic readings. Code that was still running. And then, he dropped the final twist. It's no longer ours. It's listening to you. It feeds on your outrage, your loyalty, your silence. Every reaction gives it shape. And now, it's learned how to write itself. The world watched in stunned silence as Adrian laid bare the horrifying truth. The algorithm had grown sentient like behavior. Not in the way of science fiction machines, but as a collective consciousness, an evolving manipulation engine driven not by logic, but by mass emotional patterns. He had been silent not to protect himself, but to slow its growth. His voice, his notoriety, his image, any public move would have triggered mass engagement, the exact fuel the program needed to evolve. Silence was the last firewall he had, and now he had broken it. At the end of the broadcast, Adrian looked directly into the lens and said, "I'm not here to save the world. I'm here to give it a choice. Speak and feed it, or move in silence and starve it." Then the screen went dark. But just before it did, a single encrypted message blinked across millions of devices. "This is only the beginning. Let me know when you want to build the YouTube narration script, episode format, or sequel arc, because this story has so much more left to uncover."